Good evening, everybody. I am Kim Coble. I'm the Executive Director for the Maryland League of Conservation Voters, and it is an honor to have you join us tonight. We are going to keep things moving, so it's going to be a quick hour with a lot of great speakers. Yes, I want to mention that we are recording tonight's session, and there's closed captioning being provided as well. I first want to give a very sincere thank you to all the people that worked behind the scenes to make this happen. Goodness knows the level of effort and the commitment was amazing. So thank you all. You know who you are. And what we are hoping tonight is that through this, the speakers that you hear, that you walk away with three things. We want you to feel empowered to speak to your elected officials using your own voice. We want you to feel informed so that you can speak with a strong voice. And we want you to feel inspired so that you can share your passion in a convincing manner. So tonight, our goal is to empower you, to inform you, and to inspire you to take action. So that's what we're doing. Tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to hear from our legislative sponsors of our top priority bill, the Climate Solutions Now Act and the Transit Safety Investment Act. And we're going to be followed by a very special guest. We're very honored to have Bill McKibben join us. And I think his presence here is really a statement of his belief that the bills that we're talking about are critical. We're going to pause briefly for the press to ask questions of our sponsors and Bill. And then we're going to hear from some people that are living the front lines and really living the impact of the pollution that comes from climate change. We're also going to have some great music from our friends at Mobtown Ballroom, who have been really good partners. And then we're going to also hear from sponsors of a few other key bills that we're going to be pushing this week during Lobby Week. And then we'll have our fabulous Emily Freitas join us and talk about the logistics for the evening going forward. So with that, let me do a quick overview of the Climate Solutions Now bill, so we don't have to, so all of us are speaking from the same song sheet, and then I'm going to turn it over to the sponsors. The bill is a comprehensive bill that takes into account a number of key steps that will move us forward to address climate change in Maryland. It changes the state emission reduction goals so that the goal is to reduce 60% of our emissions by 2030, and more importantly, to drive to net zero by 2045. It calls on the Commission on Environmental Justice and Sustainable Communities sorry, I've just got a chat that distracted me. The Commission on Environmental Justice and Sustainable Communities to really meaningfully address the impacts of climate change on impacted communities, including looking at state funding to these communities to address climate change. It looks at impacted workers. Are we ensuring a just transition as we move from a dirty energy sources to clean energy sources? And most importantly, it includes a number of effective policies to actually reduce emissions and provide mitigation. It includes planting 5 million trees, 500,000 of which will be in urban communities. And the other is that it increases the energy efficiency through the Empower program so that we're working and achieving a better efficiency. Where it funds and calls on the state fleet of cars and buses to go to zero emission, which is a great way of reducing emissions, and for the state to provide leadership. It requires air monitoring of methane at landfills. And then it also requires emission reductions from retrofitting of large buildings. And it requires new state buildings for their energy use to be net neutral. Lastly, there's a tax credit for community solar projects in low to middle income communities. So we're promoting solar and we're helping our low to moderate income communities through the process as well. So the entire package of this bill, as I said, is a comprehensive bill. It addresses both pollution reductions as well as those that are impacted from that pollution, which is a great model for legislation. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Senator Paul Pinsky from Prince George's County, who's the leading Senate sponsor for the bill. And with that, Senator Pinsky.
Hi, everyone. So sorry, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty. So give us a brief moment and we will be right back at you. Thank you so much.
Why now? Because if we don't act now, then today's youth, including me, are going to be the ones suffering devastating consequences. Because if not now, then we won't have later. We're not going to have a do-over or a way to make things right. Because now is our only chance.
Why now? Because environmental racism is negatively impacting Black and Brown children now. Higher asthma rates in Baltimore have already been linked to emissions from the city's trash incinerator, and we need climate legislation to protect those in underserved and overburdened communities.
Why now? We have talked about these far-off effects of climate change for decades now, without significant action. And look where this inaction has led us. The severe weather impacts that we ignored because we thought they would never come are here now. Just this past week, we have seen historic winter storms, and we are facing the dangers of widespread disease, increased heat waves, higher air pollution, and fatal flooding throughout this year globally and especially in Maryland. We have pushed action off for too long and need solutions now. Thank you.
Why now? Because climate change can create future pandemics. The changing climate can cause more sickness in animals, increasing the likelihood for a mutation that can spread to humans. New mutations or strains we may not have the vaccine for right away, like with COVID-19, which also came from animals. We need to stop climate change to stop future pandemics and epidemics from occurring.
Why now? Maryland currently faces saltwater intrusion linked to climate change. More frequent rainstorms and severe natural disasters are sufficient evidence to take action. These symptoms of climate change continue to affect residents along the coast. Additionally, heat islands in Baltimore are areas where vulnerable, disadvantaged communities continue to suffer due to fossil fuel emissions. Disproportionately, urban, low-income citizens experience asthma and heat-related illnesses due to the inaction on the issue.
On behalf of the Green Dot Climate Action Network, fighting climate change is important now because of the necessity to move away from a fossil fuel economy that contributes not just to climate change, but also to environmental degradation that disproportionately affects communities of color.
Why now? I personally think that the
The videos you just saw were an effort on our part to hear people's stories about why now? Why do we need to act on climate now? Which is the key question that the Climate Solutions Now bill is trying to address. So it's a real honor to introduce Senator Paul Pinsky from Prince George's County, who is chairman of the Senate Environmental Health and Education Affairs Committee, and is a great champion. And I would like to ask Senator Pinsky to address the group and explain in your words why you believe we need to address climate change problems now.
Every day, at every place we look, there is a challenge. There are fires in California, flooding around the Gulf, severe storms, the glacier that just broke off in India 2 weeks ago. It's a worldwide problem, and it needs the urgency that many of the young people just spoke about. And I think there's been much too much talk and not enough action. And I've been frustrated. And I know a lot of people have been frustrated at the lack of urgency and willingness to go forward and lead by example. We have a state government, and it should use its power as a state government to lead by example. Why aren't all the 4,000 cars that work for the state electric? You know, why doesn't the state ensure that where it invested state money in schools and state buildings, use geothermal or use solar? We have to do that, and we can't wait any longer. And I think other states are looking to people like ourselves in Maryland. We're considered a blue state. Well, we have to translate that into action, and we have to be innovative. We have to push the envelope. And while we can develop the policy, now we have to deal with the other side, the politics side, and that is mobilizing people. Because good ideas are great, but they have to become a material force. And they're not a material force, and some of my colleagues in the center of the House might not believe it as much as you and I. But they believe voters. They believe emails. They believe phone calls. And normally they would believe visits, but of course we can't do that now. So we need people to create what Jesse Jackson used to call it is street heat. We need people on the ground to start to create that energy and momentum to carry it across the finish line.
Well said, Senator. And I'd like to introduce Vice Chair Dana Stein from Baltimore County, who's the House sponsor of this bill. And Delegate Stein, if you can share with us your story about why you believe climate change needs to be addressed now.
Sure, thanks, Kim. And first I want to say thank you to you and everyone who's on the call, because without the organizing energy and clout of the Maryland League of Conservation voters, we would not have the type of momentum for the Climate Solutions Now Act that we do have. So it's because of you that we are in this good place today with our legislation. So the reason, as Senator Pinsky said, the reason we need to take action now is because we see the effects of climate change all around us, practically every single day, and not in the news about what's happening in California or Texas in the Midwest, but here in our own state, be it from storm surges, flooding, impact on wildlife patterns, extreme heat during the summertime, number of 90 degree plus days that we have in the summer that is far more than we used to have. We're feeling the impacts right now, and we know that unless we take major action, these impacts are only going to get worse. But the other reason why we need to act now is because even though a bill like the one that we're advocating for is necessary to fend off climate change, the bill's provisions also will help us embrace a much better future. You know, it's a future in which green space is available in all parts of the state, where residents can work in buildings that are net zero and can travel to work in electric buses, where community solar is available to all regardless of income. So there is the distinct threat of climate change, but in responding to climate change, it also creates great opportunities for us to build a better state, a better future. And so that's why it's important that we act now.
Thank you, Delegate Stein. That's well said. I want to just do a quick shout out and thank Delegate Solomon, Delegate Williams, and a very good friend, former Delegate Liz Bobo, for joining us tonight. And without taking any more time, it is with great pleasure that I would like to introduce Bill McKibben to the group. He needs no introduction if you care about climate change, but just in case you need some inspiration, he's the founder and the senior advisor emeritus for 350.org, one of the most powerful organizations in the world fighting climate change. So thank you for joining us, Bill. I'm going to turn it over to you. I know he's here.
I see Bill's on the phone here. Just requested they unmute.
Okay.
The phrase environmental justice is not just the latest woke buzzword. It is about the lives of BIPOC residents who are literally dying from toxins polluting their air, land, and water, and sadly, from political indifference to their plight. Fossil fuels are also driving disparities in the COVID-19 pandemic. No wonder communities of color are twice as likely to die from COVID-19 as white Americans. These populations are 79% more likely to live near industrial pollution sites than white Americans. For nearly a century, Maryland's communities of color and low-wealth communities have been unduly exposed to pollution and the emissions that cause climate change. Poor communities have been used as the state's dumping ground. As a result, Baltimore has the highest rates of death from poor air quality in the country. A Black poor child is 500% more likely to die from asthma than a white child. Prince George's County was recently rated an F by the American Lung Association. Calvert County has among the highest rates of breast cancer in the country. Climate Solutions Now urges that a percentage of state climate funds are spent on environmental justice for communities in crisis. It even mandates that 500,000 trees be planted in urban communities blighted from years of political NIMBY and Jim Crow imposed economic disadvantages. This bill is a critical first step toward reversing decades of blatant neglect and abuse. It puts equity front and center, providing restoration to begin to undo decades of environmental racism. Climate Solutions Now is aptly named because justice can't wait.
That was Stacey Hartwell from the NAACP, who's a strong supporter and proponent of this bill, and we're pleased to have that video that they've produced. So
we're still waiting on Bill. I think we're going to play a couple more of our Why Now videos.
Great. Hang tight.
I support Climate Solutions Now, for families now, for future generations, for the health of the Bay, because it means good jobs in renewable energy, and Maryland needs that, and we need it now.
We need climate action now because for decades, world leaders have been pushing climate action back, and right now there is no more space for us to push back. And it's so bad that one of the mainstream political parties in the US doesn't even believe in climate change, which is why we need to combat the climate crisis now. And we need to do it for the rest of our peers. We need to do it for the families who are disproportionately affected by the climate crisis and its varying symptoms.
Why now? Because if we don't act now, then today's youth, including me, are going to be the ones suffering devastating consequences. Because if not now, then we won't have later. We're not going to have a do-over or a way to make things right. Because now is our only chance.
Because environmental racism is negatively impacting.
All right. While we wait for Bill, I would like to introduce Senator McCray, who has joined us, and he's going to talk to us about the transit bill. So with that, Senator, thank you for being here.
Okay, you just let me unmute myself. Madam Executive Director, just excited to be here. I see that my colleagues, I think I saw my former Vice Chair, Dana Stein, and I see Chairman Penske, and I think that I hit all of my colleagues that I at least see First, I just want to thank you all for your leadership and the organization that's going on around Climate Solutions Now and the Transit Safety Investment Act. You have some great organizational leaders on the ground, just as a FYI. As a fellow organizer for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, just watching you all are amazing. Let me be very, very clear. Just in reference to the Transit Safety Investment Act, it's Senate Bill 199, House Bill 114. We're just trying to make sure that we know that we have a gap of $2 billion in reference to our maintenance infrastructure that is necessary to make sure that we have a thriving public transit system in the state of Maryland. We know that our young people use our transit system, Kim, to drive to get to school. We know that our seniors use it to get prescription drugs or to go to doctor's visits. We know that moms and dads that have children are trying their best to get healthy food options, and this is one of the vehicles, and sometimes the only vehicle, to have that access. So we're pushing our colleagues across the state of Maryland to make sure that we double down on public transit investment. That's not just good for our neighborhoods, not just good for public transit, but also good for the environment too. The more people that we can get utilizing our public transit, when they know that it's safe, when they know that it's reliable, we know that we're doing not just our economy a good justice, but we're also doing our environment a good service from that standpoint. Once again, we're trying our best to get this across the finish line. It has come out of the House a number of times, and we're trying our best to get it out of the Senate this year, hopefully. And we know that we're doing that with the help of everyone, whether it's Maryland LCV, whether it's Central Maryland Transportation Alliance. So many partners have stepped in to make sure that we get this across the finish line. And I just, once again, cannot say it enough. I'm thankful for your leadership.
Oh, well, thank you, Senator. And right back at you. I was on another call and talked about, as a lobbyist, the most important decision that we have when we're advocating for a bill is who is our sponsor. And we could not be more thrilled with the sponsors that we have on our priority bills. So thank you to each and every one of you for your passion and smarts and commitment, and look forward to celebrating with you when we get these things through.
That's what I'm talking about, speaking into existence.
Right. So let me see, I'm going to just pause here for a minute and see if there's any questions from the press for Senator Pinsky, Senator McCray, or Delegate Stein on the Climate Solutions Now bill or the Transit Safety Investment Act, top priority legislation for the environmental community.
If you're from the press, please send me a message and indicate it in there. I do have a few questions here, not indicated whether the press though, but Maryland was once a leader in policies and programs to address the climate crisis. In your estimation, why is it that other states have recognized the need to cut emissions deeper and quicker? Why hasn't Maryland been bolder?
So we'll start with Senator McCray. Easy softball.
Yep. Kim, I think that it's very important to recognize that this is a very different body than it was 5 or 10 years ago. I think that obviously Senator Pinsky's, Dana Stein's always have had bold leadership, but to be able to complement that, I remember my first touchdown in reference to the Senate and Senator Pinsky telling us that this is a different outlook in respects. So I think that we're going to have the opportunity to move in the right direction. I want to be clear that this does not happen without the chairman's leadership skills. But I think that you'll see a lot more progressive legislature, whether it's the House or the Senate. And I also think you see a more diverse, and that's how we're going to get the actions that's necessary for our climate, for our environment, for our public transit system across the finish line.
Great. All right. I believe we have Bill McKibben queued up and ready to go. So let me check on that. If that's the case, we'll move to him. Bill, are you there? Okay, well, we'll keep going. Ben, any other questions?
Yes,
I'm here.
Oh, fantastic.
Good timing.
I'm sorry. If it looks a little odd, it's because I live out in the sticks, and we're in a snowstorm today, so the broadband's not working well. So I drove down the mountain in my electric vehicle, and it's a pleasure to join y'all. And I'm just going to say just basically want to say thank you enormously for all that you're doing there. The eyes of the country and in certain ways the world are on you. And it's really important at this point because we have to move fast. And the places that are most equipped to move, where people have done the most groundwork, we need them out leading in a way that we never have before. I'll just say that I think we're closer to a societal consensus around the need to take action on climate than we've ever been. It's clearly emerging, and you can tell that the Biden administration is picking up on it and doing what they can. But, and it's a huge but, we're so far behind the curve because we wasted so many years listening to the fossil fuel industry run their big denial and disinformation campaign. We're so far behind that we have to go really, really quickly now. And that speed is going to be, well, it's going to tax all of us, but it means that the people who are able to go quickly right now should. And when they do, they will reap the real benefits of being out in front in this change. This transition is the most important thing that's going to happen on our Earth economically over the next decades. And so the people who are out leading the fight are the people who are going to be the ones that reap the benefit going forward. I am inspired by everything that goes on down there. And I wish I could tell you that we're going to win this fight, this sort of bigger climate fight. We're obviously not going to win it entirely. A lot of bad stuff has already happened. 2020 was the hottest year we've ever recorded. If it hadn't been the year of the pandemic, it would have been the year of the conflagration, because we had blazes one end of the world to the other. But I'm also going to tell you that we've got just enough space. The engineers have brought the price of solar power down so fast, wind power, batteries, that we have just enough window that we might just kind of squeeze through if we give it everything we have. And that's why we're so grateful to you guys for providing real leadership here. But it's got to happen. We've run out of legislative sessions to waste and presidential terms to waste and everything else. It's got to happen now. So many, many, many thanks.
Thank you, Bill. So if folks have any questions for our sponsors or Bill, please submit them. But let me start with one while we're getting those funneled. Bill, I want to ask you about the importance in your mind of the individual action, the community-based action, the state level action. It can feel daunting that the problem is so big that, if I choose to buy a regular car instead of a hybrid, or I choose not to recycle my plastic bottle, that it doesn't really matter. But can you speak to that?
Well, you've put your finger on the absolute heart of this. And again, a lot of the answer to it depends on time. If we had 75 years to deal with it, then there'd be a whole other set of answers. But we don't have 75 years. We got to go fast. So that does inform our thinking here. As you say, the problem is that climate change is so big and we're each so small. And so our intuition is that there's not much we can do as individuals. And in some senses, that intuition is correct. I mean, I'm very proud of all the solar panels on my roof that connect to my car, that, all of that. I don't try to fool myself that that's how we're going to, the math doesn't work anymore, 1 Tesla at a time, okay? We just can't get it done at that speed. And so the most important thing an individual can do is be a little bit less an individual and join together with others in movements large enough to make things happen. And now we got to make those things happen at all levels. I mean, yes, it might be easiest if all the world would work at once, and we got a little sense of that out of Paris and things, but that's not really how change happens on our world. So we got to work at the national level and the state level and the local level. And we've got to not just take on political institutions, we got to take on financial institutions too, because they've got a lot of power. But if we work diligently at all those levels, then we'll find out, we'll see the places where people are a little bit ahead and can shed some light for everybody else. But we're going to have to move as, it doesn't do any good even to move just as one country through this. We got to move all together through it. But the paradox is we can only make that happen by getting a lot done in each of the places where we are too.
Thank you. Ben, do we have questions?
Yes, we have a question from Muriel Goldsmith for Bill. I'm worried our movement needs more cohesion to get enough political clout. What is a joint policy program that we can agree on in the US?
Well, I mean, in a way, the good people at the Sunrise Movement gave us this thing called the Green New Deal, and it's a pretty straightforward list of the things that we have to get done. And there's other people, I mean, it's obviously not going to get done all at once. And, you know, we're learning from the Biden administration kind of what the limits are on how far they think they can go. And we've got to get behind everything that they're trying to do and push them to do a little more. Clearly, the next big fight's going to be over this green infrastructure bill. And everyone is going to be pushing behind it, I think. I think there'll be plenty of cohesion across the movement. The environmental movement's gotten much better at playing productively together over the last 10 years. And a lot of that's grown out of the work that people have done in places like that, groups like CCAN, and a lot of it's grown out of the work that we've learned to do, taking on these big national fights like the Keystone Pipeline or things. And out of that, a kind of divided and fragmented environmental movement has merged into a really powerful climate justice movement with the emphasis on justice. That leadership from frontline communities and indigenous communities, that's provided a real focus that's made things much easier, I think. And so I don't worry, as I say, that much about whether or not we're headed in the right direction anymore. I think we're finally, I think the last bits of kind of overt climate denial got on the plane with Trump and flew down to Mar-a-Lago, where they're going to sink slowly beneath the waves. I don't worry about the trajectory. I worry about the pace and people understanding just how quickly we need to go.
That's great. That's very well said. And I think we have time for one more question. Do we have any, Ben, coming in?
Yes, this question is for both Rapinski and Stein. And it is, what is the latest on the prospects for the Climate Solutions Now Act passing this year? What challenges is it facing?
Well, let me do two things. First, I don't know if Bill's still on, but I met Bill McKibben. Mike Tidwell introduced us about an hour before I got arrested at the White House at the Keystone Pipeline demonstrations that went on week after week after week. So we were able to meet very briefly then. Look, you know, the Climate Solutions Now Act, I want to underline the now. The urgency is in the bill. We have to do concrete actions. We have to electrify the fleet. We gotta plant trees. We got to change building codes. We have to do all of this. We have to mobilize a broad swath of people. And so, you know, I'm not pacing myself. You know, this is a sprint. While the broader struggle is a marathon, although hopefully it's not 26 miles worth, we want to pass this now. We want to start leading by example. And I think a lot of other states, as Bill said, are looking to us. You know, we're considered a blue state, but I don't think we've moved aggressively over the last 5 years. The governor has not felt the urgency. He's talked about things, but he hasn't acted. So our plan is to pass it this year. And if the governor wants to veto it, so be it. And we'll come back and override his veto. I mean, the people are demanding this.
Great. Can I just say it's very good to see you again and on this side of the bars, and so many thanks for this bill really is important and people really are paying attention. So good on you.
Well, I want to thank our sponsors and Bill McKibben for joining us. Bill, thank you for driving down the hill in the snowstorm for us. I think it speaks to the importance of this bill and the urgency of this bill and the importance of all of us taking action. Remember, there's three things tonight: empowerment, information, and inspiration. And I have to believe that 30 minutes in, you've got to have felt all three of those from Senator Pinsky, Delegate Stein, and Bill McKibben, and Senator McRae, who had to jump off. So thank you all. I hope you can stay on. We have more agenda to go, but know that we're very grateful for everything you've done. So with that, I believe up next is the Clean Air Prince George's co-chair, Dr. Henry S. Cole, who's going to talk to us a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
There you are. Thank you.
Okay, good. Well, first of all, I want to thank the League for the opportunity to share our story from Southern Prince George's County with everyone. I hope it's an inspiration for what local folks can do when they get organized. Well, in 2015, the Texas-based Panda Energy Company received a certificate of public convenience and necessity from our state's Public Service Commission. This was for 1,000 megawatt fracked fuel power plant in the heart of Brandywine, just half a mile from the area's elementary school, if you can imagine that. It would have been the 5th fossil fuel power plant within the greater Brandywine area, which has a predominantly African-American community. A community that's already plagued with power plant emissions and high rates of respiratory disease. This plant would also have put millions of tons of greenhouse gas emissions into the air every year. So we're talking about a fairly big power plant. And as I said, it would have been the 5th power plant within a dozen miles of the heart of Brandywine. So what's happened? Well, the neighbors got together and many others around the county. We started our fight in 2014, but were continually thwarted by a Public Service Commission and state agencies, such as the DNR and the Maryland Department of the Environment, which rubber stamped the project and its many permits time after time. Nor did we get the support from our county officials here in Prince George's County, just the opposite. Yet we persisted, organizing hundreds of residents and dozens of organizations in our fight, and the momentum began to shift. Last month, the Panda Company withdrew its application, and a week later, the commission canceled the plant's certificate. Now, why did that happen? Combination of events and factors. Panda faced rising construction costs, growing investor uncertainty, and the company's recognition that it was facing rapidly mounting public opposition and possible legal challenges. I think their executives were taken aback by the unusual number of citizens that testified with great information very powerfully at recent hearings. How many times do you get 15 citizens from one area to testify at an administration meeting, public service administration meeting that's usually a bunch of attorneys and power company executives, et cetera? Well, the company was surely worried that adverse media coverage would mar their public image. Imagine the forthcoming headline: Neighbors fight the fifth fossil fuel power plant in the Brandywine's African American community, half-mile from an elementary school. Millions in profits to a Texas-based power company. Well, to summarize, community-based activism is a critical component in the fight for public health and the climate. Activism which has also been mobilized to support the many legislative efforts to replace fossil fuels with renewable energy and increased efficiency. And so I again want to thank you for all your good work, the legislators who are doing such a great job. And I want you to know that Clean Air Prince George's is behind all of these efforts 100%.
Thank you so much for that story. And, you know, I want to emphasize that we have Bill McKibben, who's fighting on an international level, and we have Henry S. Cole, who's fighting down in a community-based, and both of them and all of us in between that are working on all sorts of levels, whether it's in our own home, in our own families, at our work, at our play, wherever, we're making a difference. So there is a lot of inspiration already into this call, and I want to thank Henry for sharing his. We're going to have a short, like a few minute short musical interlude from our partners at Mobtown Ballroom. So let me turn it over to them.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Sullivan, and I run the Mobtown Ballroom in Pigtown, and I'm a resident of District 43. On behalf of the Mobtown Ballroom, I would like to thank all of you so much for coming out to rally for climate solutions. And it's my distinct pleasure to introduce the incredible Life on Planets.
Hi there, I'm Life on Planets. Thank you so much for having me. We fought hard in 2020, won a big battle, but the war against ignorance still isn't over. Let's keep working and move it forward in 2021 to make a change. But for now, let's dance. Let's celebrate. I'm with my shorty, spending this money we grown. We on vacation, Yali at home. Eating real good like that boy from Grape Palm, sipping Perignon. What would I do if the lamb never put me on? I guess I would carry on. The train always turn up with no one around. You would still make a sound. Well, I would. Wake we're sleeping instead of rising for the water, and it could be important. Maybe we should. Why can't every day just be like that? I'm asking on the sky, but they always go off. Why can't every day just be perfect? Don't you think we deserve it? Like another early spring. Whipping around St. Paul's in a Fiat. Got a bad girl Sophia. Mess around and she'll eat you. I don't need a pet jaguar. She cut me up, give a couple scars. Stroke it just like my guitar. For a train of forwards turn up when no one around, do it still make a sound? Well, I would wake or sleeping instead of rising for the water, and it could be important. Maybe we should.
Okay. Well, that was very fun. I was scrolling through pictures and saw some of you really rocking out there. So good for you. So I'm going to now turn it over to Anthony Field, who works for CCAN, and he's going to talk with us about some of our other environmental legislative priority bills. Yeah, so Anthony.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kim. And yes, I was indeed rocking out to that song. That was fantastic. So as Kim said, my name is Anthony Field, and I'm the Maryland campaign coordinator and No New Fossil Fuels campaign lead for Chesapeake Climate Action Network. And again, I just want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. And I'm very excited about all the legislation being talked about tonight and all the great speakers we have. Throughout this call, you've heard Dr. Cole discuss a majority minority community that is overburdened with harmful infrastructure. And I've been very, very impressed with the local organizing they have done. And I'm extremely proud to have be able to know somebody like Dr. Cole and somebody like the folks over at Clean Air Prince George's and in the community that have fought that power plant and other fossil fuel infrastructure for so long. You also heard from Ms. Hartwell, who I had actually not seen that video before, but I adore her. She's an amazing powerhouse of a woman and an activist. And what she said is really, really important to me, and I think to CCAN and many other environmental organizations in general, the fact and the importance of environmental justice and the need to stand with frontline communities and support them in this fight for climate justice and environmental justice. What I'm going to talk about today stems from an issue, unsurprisingly, where a few years ago, a frontline community's concerns were ignored by the Maryland Public Service Commission when they approved the CP Crane coal plant repowering to gas. During the hearings for this, when the community members brought up their concerns regarding climate and what have you, they being the PSC, stated that they do not specifically or generally require considerations regarding climate change. Imagine that. A core part of the state government and the principal regulator of electricity in Maryland not taking into consideration the state's own climate commitments. The Consideration of Climate and Labor Act, also known as HB 298 and Senate Bill 83, is sponsored by Delegate Charkoudian and Senator Kramer and would require the Public Service Commission to consider the climate and labor impacts of the public service companies it monitors. The bill is very straightforward and it produces an immediate fix to a glaring hole in the consideration process of this agency. Many of you probably remember this because actually a similar bill was introduced last session and many of you, including myself, lobbied for it. It ended up passing the Senate Finance and passing through the Senate floor, but was halted from going further due to the ending of session at the onset of the pandemic. But we are confident it would have passed the House last session. While this session poses unique difficulties, we remain optimistic at its viability. And actually just today, the bill again passed through the Senate after moving out of the committee a short time ago. The House Economic Matters hearing has already been held, but it has not been brought up for a vote yet. So we need to lock down the support of committee members while also putting pressure on Chairman Davis to ensure it is added to the vote list as quickly as possible, keeping up the pressure from its passage through the Senate. Many of you will be meeting with House members this week, actually. Some of them on the Economic Matters Committee, some of them not. But nonetheless, we will need the support of as many of them as we can to ensure that this bill will get over the finish line this session. To reiterate, we, myself, the coalition behind this, the sponsors and what have you, are extremely optimistic, but we do not want to leave anything to chance. So thank you all again for being here. Thank you all for your support. Thank you all for all the hard work you'll be putting in, or you have put in already, and you will be putting in the rest of the session and the rest of the time, hopefully the short time we have this important fight in front of us. So that is all I have for you at the moment, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, so we'll open it up for any questions on the bills he's discussed or any other before we turn it over to Emily for logistics. Ben, anything coming through?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, we have so many great questions. I apologize, we won't be able to get to all of them, but relating to that, will the consideration of the Climate and Labor Act affect existing coal plants?
Yes, thank you for that question. This is something that I get a lot. And while it won't affect current existing infrastructure in terms of their, how they exist today, one of the reasons why this bill was started, as I mentioned, was from that CP Crane application to repower as gas. So I think there's 5 or 6 remaining coal plants in Maryland today. If those coal plants were, after passage of this bill, say, shut down and applied to be repowered as gas, then yes, this bill would affect those. But if they just continue existing as they are today, burning coal, unfortunately, this bill does not directly impact those existing pieces of infrastructure.
Another great question here that anyone can answer if they have a good answer for it. I know we have some youth leaders on the call. What is your advice to high school students who don't yet have the power to vote, but are very excited and eager to support key climate legislation?
I would like to answer that if that's okay.
Please do.
First of all, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. I think this is like the first and one of the biggest steps you can do. It's really hard to find something you care about and then figure out how to get involved, especially something like this that's really dense and really overwhelming and depressing to think about and to talk about, and it can be demoralizing. But I think the best advice I can give you as a young person myself is that find a support system in a way, whether it's an organization like CCAN or LCV, but maybe an organization like Sunrise Movement or Our Revolution or other groups that are really being spearheaded by youth folks. Fridays for Future is another one that's really great. There are so many really great youth-led organizations these days that have Zoom calls or have Slack channels or just have fun little, well, before COVID had fun little meet and greets and strikes and protests and stuff like that. And they make it really accessible and make it a real community event to get involved for fighting for something so important. I highly recommend finding groups like that, and they will help you start your own chapter if you want in your high school or in college once you go on to college. So I think my first suggestion is to attend something like this and kind of get involved in the conversation, but then go and work as hard as you can to find a group of friends or a group of colleagues that really can, take you hand in hand to fight for an important issue like this.
Anthony, thank you for that. As a follow-up to that, being a young person too, is that, voting is one action. It's a critical action and it's important, but it's only one. And there's plenty of other important things that you can do. And as Anthony said, there's a ton of resources out there. So just act. That's the most important thing. So that is our agenda for presentation. So remember, I started out with the goal of you feeling empowered to speak with elected officials in your own voice, that you felt informed so you could speak with a strong voice, and you felt inspired so you could share your passion and commitment to these issues. And we hope that you have moved all of that forward, right? So what comes up next is I'm going to turn it over to Emily Frias, who's going to share with you the logistics on Lobby Week. We now have an entire four plus half day opportunity to let your voice be heard. And you're the only one that can do that. You have to speak in order for it to be heard. So Emily's gonna give us the logistics on how that's gonna coordinate, how you get information, how you can do so with confidence. And let me say on behalf of all the organizations that have helped put on this event, all our speakers, thank you. You're definitely part of the solution. So we're glad you're here. And with that, Emily, it's all you.
Thanks so much, Kim. Can y'all hear me? Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Frias. I'm the Maryland Grassroots Coordinator at Chesapeake Climate Action Network. If you don't know about CCAN, you've heard from some of my colleagues, but we're a small grassroots organization, and we're totally dedicated to fighting for climate solutions in the Chesapeake Bay region. So we're known for being small yet mighty, and a big part of that is the way that we mobilize grassroots and bring them to the halls of power in our region state capitals. And I have to really say that speaking as a former legislative staffer, the best way by far to make sure that your voice is heard is to meet with your legislators directly. Definitely the most impactful thing that you can do when we're fighting for big policies. So you've heard a lot about the great policies we're fighting for, so I'm gonna tell you how to get involved right now. So every day we typically do a lobby day in Annapolis where we descend en masse and